Hello and welcome to FEC On Demand. As federal elections ramp up, state and local candidates, party organizations, and other non-federal committees may want to participate by contributing to federal campaigns. While that's usually not a problem, federal law does impose certain source and amount limitations on those contributions, and in some cases, registration and reporting requirements for the non-federal committees. It's important for non-federal campaigns and committees to be aware of these and other restrictions and requirements prior to engaging in federal activity. This video highlights some of the key differences between federal and state laws, describes accounting methods for committees involved in both federal and non-federal activity, identifies the triggers for committee registration, discusses transfers from non-federal to federal committees, and reviews affiliation and its consequences. Federal and state campaign finance laws address similar political activities, but may differ considerably. For instance, some states permit corporate and union contributions, while federal law does not. So when an organization or individual chooses to support both federal and non-federal candidates, they must be aware of the laws governing both state and federal activity, including limits on contributions to candidates, parties, and PACs, restrictions on transfers of funds, and other activity. In general, state campaign finance laws apply to races for state offices, and the federal laws apply to campaigns for Congress and President. Contributions to federal candidates and committees are subject to the limits in this chart. The highlighted limits are adjusted for inflation, so they will increase over time. Contributions to candidates are limited on a per-election basis, while all other limits are per calendar year. As noted earlier, most non-federal committees may make at least some federal contributions. However, they must be able to demonstrate that the funds they used to make their federal contributions were permissible under federal law. To do so, committees must use an accounting method that distinguishes between federally permissible funds and those that are not, such as corporate or union funds. In general, federal law offers committees that are active in both federal and non-federal elections two options. The first is to establish separate bank accounts for federal and non-federal activity. Under this option, only the federal account is subject to FEC rules and reporting requirements. The non-federal account would be governed solely by state law. The second option is to establish a single bank account for all activity, federal and non-federal. With this option, all of the committee's funds are subject to the limits, prohibitions, and reporting requirements of federal law. Any impermissible funds, such as corporate contributions, must be disgorged from the account. Committees that choose this second option should be aware that the states may impose additional registration and reporting requirements related to your non-federal activity. So be sure to contact the appropriate state election office for more information. Generally, if a non-federal campaign, party organization, or PAC makes federal contributions or expenditures that exceed $1,000 in a calendar year, it must register with the FEC as a federal political committee. As an exception to that rule, state PACs sponsored by a corporation, labor organization, trade association, or membership organization must register as a federal separate segregated fund, or SSF, in order to make any contributions to federal campaigns. The $1,000 registration threshold does not apply to them. In addition, SSFs must abide by special rules that, among other things, limit their solicitations to a restricted class of individuals associated with their connected organization. In addition to the $1,000 contribution and expenditure threshold, local party organizations may also trigger registration by raising $5,000 in funds for use in federal elections or by spending more than $5,000 on certain activities that benefit federal candidates but don't count as contributions or expenditures. These exempt activities include distributing slate cards and sample ballots, creating pins, bumper stickers, and similar campaign materials, and conducting a voter drive on behalf of the party's presidential and vice presidential nominees. While state candidates and office holders generally may contribute to federal candidates and committees, if they decide to run for federal office themselves, they cannot transfer any funds from their state campaign to their federal campaign. Instead, the candidate's non-federal committee may choose to refund its leftover funds to the contributors and arrange for the federal campaign to solicit those same donors using its own federally permissible funds. Federal law prohibits a candidate's non-federal campaign from covering any expenses, including solicitation costs, for the federal campaign. Federal law treats all committees established, financed, maintained, or controlled by the same people as if they were one committee. This affiliation concept is particularly important for local party organizations to understand if they choose to make federal contributions. Federal law presumes that a state party committee and all of its registered local units are affiliated with one another. As a result, they are treated as if they were one committee for purposes of contribution limits. That means, among other things, that a multi-candidate state party committee and all of its FEC-registered local committees combined could contribute no more than $5,000 to a candidate. That concludes our brief overview of the federal campaign finance laws that apply to non-federal committees active in federal elections, as well as differences between federal and state laws, accounting methods, non-federal committee registration, transfers from non-federal campaigns, and affiliation. For more information on the laws governing non-federal committee contributions to federal campaigns, please see the links listed below in the description. If you have additional questions, visit us at www.fec.gov. Call us at 800-424-9530 or email us at info@fec.gov.